And then Brink started, of course, to improve the heat recovery ventilation systems. And in 1996, Brink was the first one to introduce the so-called cross-counterflow heat exchanger with a high efficiency, being the first in the Netherlands to do so.
I love how the story, starts with the sons coming to America and then going back, and it just goes to show, sharing knowledge, and it's kind of come full circle where we're reaching out to you.
Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you soon at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's a special Passive House component episode of the Passive House podcast.
G'day, Matthew Cutler-Welsh here, and welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm coming to you this week from Otatahi, Christchurch in New Zealand. And where are you, Zach?
I am in Seattle.
Awesome. And we've got a special component spotlight episode this week. We're talking ventilation.
We are indeed. A new component that is available, ERV, HRV, from Brink, that's available in North America now via 475.
Yeah, and great to have both Gabrielle O'Grady from 475, but also Arthur directly from Brink, in fact, coming from Netherlands at the time of this recording. Great to have both of those talking about their history and where Brink is now, with some really exciting innovations available through 475 across the US. So let's get into it. This is Gabrielle O'Grady from 475 and Arthur Dijkstra from Brink.
Gabby and Arthur, welcome.
Hi, Zach. Thank you.
Hi, thanks a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we start with a couple of introductions? Gabby, could you get going? What are you up to at 475?
Sure. Just want to say it's such a pleasure being here. I'm a big fan of podcasts and the Passive House Accelerator in particular. I am a 475 product consultant. I'm based in Brooklyn, New York, at our headquarters here. My career at 475 started with consulting on our ProClima line of airtight and vapor control layers. However, I do have a background, because of my background in retro commissioning HVAC systems. When we brought Brink to the market in North America, my role has moved to Brink's successful launch here. So I'm really working in the Brink world now, centralized ERVs. And I also have 4+ years of experience in healthcare. So I really enjoy working with Brink systems, which I think of as preventative health. And I think indoor air quality has a huge impact on our health.
You're here. And you're now right at this moment in Brooklyn. Is that right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, Gabby. And you mentioned Brink, so that's a good segue to you, Arthur. Tell us about your role at Brink.
My role at Brink is export manager. I'm responsible for the sales of our products outside the Netherlands, which is just a little bit more than 50% of what we produce, we sell to other countries. At the moment, I'm in the Netherlands, in Staphorst, in our head office. And I have a long working career. Interesting with this podcast, you can't see how old somebody is, but I'm close to 60 years old, so I have already quite some experience. I studied electronics back in the 80s and started after being in the army for some time in the air conditioning and cooling business, developing and selling electronic controls. And around 1999, I started to work as an export manager in the heat recovery ventilation business. And this is what I still do. And I am in Brink for 5 years now. and selling our products to the customers outside the Netherlands.
Thank you. And so you mentioned the Army and electronics and heating and cooling. Did those come together, or was that the Army a little break from electronics and heating and cooling?
Not at all, but in those years when it was still Cold War, every boy had to go into the Army for 2 years, and that stopped my study.
Got it.
Or maybe if I didn't have to join the Army, I would have continued studying. But I had to go.
Right.
And then I started in sales, and by accident, more or less, I ended up in the refrigeration and the indoor climate business, and did some studies there. Find heat recovery ventilation a very interesting business, because it helps to improve the planet by saving energy. And I like this business a lot. So that is why I've been working now for almost 25 years in this business.
Fantastic. And so this is a great chance for us to dive into what Brink and 475, your two businesses, have been up to in bringing this new solution to the North American market. So can we start first with you, Gabby, though, to talk a little bit about the need that 475 identified? I mean, you did some focus group work to kind of uncover that. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right. So one thing I really like about how 475 started is, our founders, they were working on passive house projects and realizing that there was a gap in the market, not only in products, but knowledge resources. And so that's what we set out to do as a company. And since we started as a company and bringing the products that we currently have, we've also had these focus groups, and so that we can listen to what others are needing and wanting here in North America. And so we arranged these focus groups. Some of them were done before I even joined 475, but what kept coming up time and time again, listening to passive house architects, designers, consultants, engineers, was that they wanted another option. They wanted another high performance passive house certified centralized ERV, HRV system in North America. So bringing on Brink was very intentional. We heard that it was needed, and it was also very intentional to partner with Brink. We have a great relationship with them. They're innovators, offer excellent support and service, and they've been around a while. And one of the things I really like when, talking with Brink is they are very proud to learn from their mistakes. It's very much a part of their company's culture. And so, they've been around a while, and we're jumping on board after they've already innovated to bring in the latest line that we are supplying. So
right. Excellent. Well, Arthur, can you tell us about that latest line? What are you bringing over, and what makes it special?
The latest product line of Brink, it's the 5th generation of heat recovery ventilation units, and the product line name is FLAIR. And we offer the FLAIR in 5 different models, coming from 225 cubic meters per hour ventilation up to 600. And these units are now on the market for a few years. As Gabi already mentioned, Brink is very proud on the innovations that we do. And in this FLAIR range, we also put in the latest technology that we get from leading component manufacturers. For example, the fan motors, we use a German fan motors from a well-known company, EBM, and we apply the latest technology that they have. And this allows us to optimize the performance of the units, giving them high efficiency, low power consumption, silent units, but also compact in size and for a, let's say, acceptable cost. And all these technology that we put in, we do that to give the units the best possible technical specifications. Our units are all rated by Passive House, and you can find them on the Passive House website, where you find them among the best units.
Got it. So Passive House Institute certified then?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And so I think when people in this community think about ERVs and HRVs, they're first focused on efficiency and what is that number. But you're looking at kind of all the kind of holistic solution here, right? With a few different sort of metrics, right? So there's efficiency. You mentioned that power consumption, size, noise, cost. How does this rank or compare to, say, the other big ERV and HRV supplier in North America on those 5 metrics?
I think one of the key things that we do at Brink is that we focus on a relative compact unit, that it is not too big in size, that it will fit nicely in your house. And within this size, we try to optimize the efficiency. We produce the heat exchangers ourselves. So we have quite some good knowledge on the heat exchanger and try to get a high efficiency in combination with low power consumption, so a low use of electricity, because the fans are running all the time and it makes sense to have them very efficient. Of course, the noise is also important because you don't like to hear the ventilation system running. So it's important to also have an eye on the noise. And finally, the cost of the unit. Of course, we also have to keep the cost in mind, that the units are not too expensive. And this is a combination of a number of factors that we try to optimize. And we've been quite successful in doing it because here in Europe, Brink is one of the leading companies in the heat recovery business.
And what are the main customers for the Brink in Europe right now? Like, what's your main market?
Our main markets are the Netherlands, Germany, and Belgium. The Netherlands is, of course, our home market, and heat recovery ventilation is popular in the Netherlands for a couple of years. Brink started in the 60s already, selling these heat recovery ventilation units, but the big growth came about 30 years ago, 1995, 1996, where more and more homes got heat recovery ventilation. And nowadays, if we talk about today, 90 or 95% of the new built homes in the Netherlands have heat recovery ventilation.
Wow, yeah.
And that is because our homes are heated with a heat pump, and the heat pumps have a limited capacity. And to keep your house warm, you have to insulate your house quite well, but also make it airtight. And if you make it airtight, you must ventilate to be able to live in it. And then it makes sense to do it with a heat recovery ventilation unit. Also in Belgium, we see a trend. They are a couple of years behind the Netherlands, but also in Belgium, the majority of the new built homes get heat recovery ventilation. And we see the same in Germany. More and more homes, especially the low energy or zero energy homes, they get heat recovery ventilation. In the Netherlands, our customers are housing associations, investors, building companies, but sometimes also private people. And our way to market is through the installer. That is the traditional distribution that Brink is doing in the Netherlands. In Germany, most of our products go through wholesale because that is the more common way in Germany. Whereas we sell the products to various wholesalers, and the wholesalers sell them to installers, and then the installers install them in the homes of the individual people. In many other European countries, heat recovery ventilation is not so popular. Also, depending on the country and the climate, you can imagine that in the Mediterranean countries, like, for example, Italy, where the climate is always nice and warm, there is not too much need for recovery of heat, but they use the heat recovery units also to recover cold. So if you have air conditioning in your house, you can also win back the cold air. And of course, even in Italy, in the northern part, where the mountains are, there it can also get cold. So it makes also sense to install a ventilation unit in a well-insulated home.
Right. And in the case of North America, Brink will be these units will be available through 475. And you mentioned the 225, 225 through 600. So Gabby, or both Gabby and Arthur, like, what building types are these units appropriate for first? And then, Gabby, who is the market for the 475's distribution of the Brink?
Sure. So we're seeing that this size is great for multifamily projects. Sometimes I see a lot of the smaller units in multifamily projects, as well as between small to large homes as well. So really, we can work with you to size a unit for your project. So if you have plans, feel free to send those over, and we can pick out what size unit is right for your projects. So.
And this applies the same. Yeah, this is the same for Europe. And interesting enough, although many countries are part of European Union with many rules and regulations. In the ventilation business, every country has its own rules and regulations around ventilation, and they vary quite some. So some countries, as a good example, they look at floor space. Some countries, they look at the volume of the room. If you talk about a bedroom, in some countries, they say, well, the amount of air that you need to ventilate, it depends on for how many people the bedroom is designed. And they don't look at floor space or volume. And this means that if you have one particular house, you take a small one-family home in mind. In some countries, you need a unit with 325 cubic meter to ventilate according to the regulation. But if you build this same house in another country, you might need a 450 unit. So that is why we have quite a wide range. But in general, the 225 is for a smaller apartment, where the 600 is for a villa, as we call it.
And in the US, we have lots of bathrooms. We tend to have more bathrooms than European homes. So we need sometimes slightly larger units because of that.
Right.
The interesting thing is about our range of units that they are all, let's say, more or less identical. So the setup is the same. They have the same type of vents, but of course the bigger units have bigger vents, the same heat exchanger, the same type of heat exchanger, the same controls. So if you are used to work and commission a 225 unit, it's very easy to do one of the other ones. And this is highly appreciated by the installers because if they know one unit, they know the whole range.
And so this is a brand new to the North America market component, or set of kind of suite of components. But it's not clear. It's clearly not from a brand new company. I mean, Brink has been around for a while. So, and Gabby, you kind of referred to this kind of tradition of innovation that's been going on, and I know there have been some key kind of technological milestones that Brink has been a part of in the development of this technology, of kind of this class of technology. So I'd love to, Arthur, if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing a little bit of that. I think it'd be really interesting for listeners to hear where this newfangled component is coming from, because it's pretty interesting.
Thank you, Zach. I can do it. And here is already a warning. It's quite a long story. So if you like to cut out some of the parts, it's fine with me.
Grab your tea, everyone.
You can select what you like. Yes, Brink is founded 120 years ago in 1903 by a person with the family name Brink. His first name was Reind, and he was a blacksmith focusing on agriculture, tooling, and machines, and was in the city of Assen, which is in the northeast of the Netherlands. And well, it was not a very special or super successful business, but the business grew. And around 1920, his son Roelof joined the company. And this son Roelof appeared to be very entrepreneurial. And he started to grow the business from the agriculture machines into trucks and trailers, but also in making towing hooks. And I think you call them also trailer hitch.
Yep.
And there they were quite successful. And after the Second World War, they moved the company to Meppel, which is very close to where we are today, and focused mainly on these trailer hitch business. Because making trucks, they were not competitive enough. And in the early 60s, this Roelof, he had 3 sons, and he sent these sons to the United States to have a look at mass production. What could they learn from the mass production in the USA and apply it for their towing hook business?
This is the part of the story that's sort of like a fable here. Yeah.
Yes,
Please
I
go
can
on.
imagine. So at the same time, in the Netherlands, those days, the heating of the homes was done by coal. But in the Netherlands, around the 60s, they found a lot of natural gas. And when these 3 sons were in the USA, they saw forced air heating powered by gas. And they thought, well, that is a great idea. Now in the Netherlands, we also have gas. Why not try to sell these forced air heating systems in the Netherlands as well? Because with the gas, it was much easier than with coal. And the other benefit, of course, is that's quite quickly. So they started to import these Lennox machines.
Right.
And after a few years, they decided to make their own forced air heating machine, let's say improved copy of the Lennox air heater, adjusted a little bit to the Dutch needs. And they were quite successful in making these air heating systems. But then in the 70s, the energy crisis came. And started to look at efficiency of heating systems, and these forced air heating systems were not so efficient, which meant that selling them was getting more and more difficult because the people were now also focusing on the costs for heating their house. And as a solution, Brink came up to combine these forced air heating systems with domestic heat recovery. So this is when Brink developed the first heat recovery unit. And they combined it with the forced air heating system. And this is around 1982.
Right. And so it was actually Brink who sort of invented that, or was it just one of the first movers in that space? What was
the technology was already known and applied in the commercial building.
Got it.
And there were already very small companies who also did heat recovery systems for normal homes, but not in the extent that Brink was doing it. Brink was one of the first in the Netherlands to do this on a larger scale and sell it in bigger volume in homes. And then Brink started, of course, to improve the heat recovery ventilation systems. And in 1996, Brink was the first one to introduce the so-called cross-counterflow heat exchanger with a high efficiency, being the first in the Netherlands to do so. Before that, they were using cross-flow heat exchangers with an efficiency of 60-65%. And the cross-counterflow, they have an efficiency of 90% or even more.
Right. So that's the diagram that so many of us have seen, where the two airstreams are crossing over each other through the heat exchanger. If I'm understanding correctly.
You understand it correctly. The two airstreams are in parallel against each other to exchange the heat in the best way. One of the other things to improve was how can you keep the air volume in control, because the unit have a filter on both sides to protect the heat exchanger from getting dirty. From the outside, you can understand that, for example, bugs or other dust can come in the heat exchanger and block the small channels in the heat exchanger. So there was a filter to filter the outside air, but also from the other way, where you extract the air, there can also be dust in the house or things that can blocked the heat exchanger. So the unit had a filter, and as the filter was getting dirtier, the air resistance increased and less air was supplied to the house. So they were looking at a solution how to overcome that. And as one of the first, Brink introduced the so-called constant flow fan solution, whereas you can program a certain amount of air, and independent of the resistance, the unit will provide the amount of air that is programmed. For example, you program the unit to supply 100 cubic meter of air to your house, and if the filter is getting more polluted, the fan will run harder to overcome this extra resistance and guarantee that you get these 100 cubic meters of air in your house.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a great benefit, and it's highly appreciated by customers, but also by installers, that we have this constant flow principle. In the beginning of 2004, Brink introduced again a successor, the third generation, which had full electronic control. Before, the control was also electronic, but relatively simple. But in 2004, we introduced a unit with a digital display that you can nicely program. We continue to improve the unit, and in 2011, we introduced a unit with an even more improved volume control by pressure sensors. We measure the pressure sensor across the fan wheel, and based on that, we can calculate the amount of air that the unit will give, and this gives an even more accurate control. And our latest version, the 5th generation FLAIR that I already mentioned, it has again an improvement by applying a vane anemometer. And this vane anemometer can even measure the air volume much more accurate. And this accurate air volume measuring also helps to increase the efficiency of the unit, because we can bring the two air streams in perfect balance with each other. So the more accurate you can measure the air volume, the higher the efficiency will get. Well, this is a little bit on the history of Brink.
Well, it's so cool. I mean, it's from like trailer hitches to the first HRVs in 1962 to the cross counterflow innovation. And I mentioned that it was like a fable. So you had the three sons go to the U.S. and come back with this notion, this idea of the introducing forced air heating. But didn't the three sons like go into their different, like it was different paths and different businesses for Brink?
That's correct. When they returned, so they started to do these forced air heating. On the other hand, they still had the towing hook business. And they also did some office furniture, all things that have to do with metal. And when Roelof got older, these three sons took over the business. One son for the towing hook business, one son for the office furniture, and the other one for the forced air heating systems, including the heat recovery ventilation. To finalize the nice story, it is almost like a fairy tale of the three sons.
Great. Please do. Please do.
In 2002, these three sons, they decided to sell their businesses. And the son who was responsible for the towing hook business, he sold them to Thule, which is a well-known Swedish company.
Yeah.
The one of the office furniture also sold the business to a company. I forgot the name, but this company went bankrupt, so it didn't end quite well. And the son who was responsible for the forced air heating and ventilation business sold the company to a German group called Centrotech Sustainable, a group with companies who are active in the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning business. I don't know exactly how many employees by that time, but last year there were about 3,000 employees in this group.
Oh, wow.
Working worldwide. But since January 1st this year, Centrotech group was mainly sold to an Italian group called Ariston. And this Ariston group is a worldwide player in the heat pump and warm water business with over 10,000 employees. Big part of the turnover is in Europe. Italy is, of course, an important country, but also selling products in United States, in South America, in Africa, and in Asia. And we are pleased that we are now part of this Ariston group, because it also opens doors for us to expand even more. Within Brink, in the main factory in Staphorst, we work with about 250 people. And as Gabi already mentioned, we focus on innovation, and we have an R&D department with 25 persons working all day in designing and developing even better units. Of course, we have our production where we make the heat recovery units and the heat exchangers. But we also have a few installation companies in the Netherlands who install these heat recovery units. And this gives also very valuable input for our development from an installer. As we install them ourselves, our colleagues who install them, they give feedback what they like or not like.
Sure.
And
Right.
we can put that these ideas also in our products.
Mm-hmm.
In total, in the Brink Group, we are with about 500 employees. So it's not a very big, but it's also not small.
Yeah. And you said 25 people full-time doing R&D?
That's correct.
Yeah. That's great.
I love how the story, starts with the sons coming to America and then going back, and it just goes to show, sharing knowledge,
Mhm.
and it's kind of come full circle where we're reaching out to you. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's clear from what you just stepped through of this role that Brink has been playing for a long time in advancing this technology, and so it's really, I think, exciting for us in North America to get a chance to benefit from that kind of history of innovation with now that the FLAIR is available here. So how do folks get their hands on a FLAIR?
So you can go to our website, 475thenumbers.supply, or if you're in Canada, ca.475.supply, and fill out a quote request form, and submit your drawings, plans, any details of your project, and we'd be happy to work up a quote and size the system for you. If you're listening to this, we ask Zach to release the podcast after we receive UL and CSA electrical safety certifications. So if you're hearing this, then that means we passed. So
Woohoo!
Yay.
Congratulations in the future.
Yeah. At the time of this recording, we just finished the last step. So that's the factory inspection. So they were just over in the Netherlands with Arthur, and that went well. So
Awesome.
Fingers crossed.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. Well, Gabby and Arthur, this has been really fun, and I think that you're gonna find a lot of interest here in North America around FLAIR. So before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I wanted to mention, and then you go ahead, Arthur, is just that we're building out our third party commissioning network. So if you'd like to be involved in the commissioning of these systems, please reach out so that we can get your name on our list and we can connect you with people in your area. I did want to mention also that in addition to all the excellent features, the excellent heat recovery core that Arthur talked about in the technology, Brink has a lot of included parts which might come extra with some other systems. So that's, I think, something that sets them apart. So that includes the intelligent preheater, and then the PCB board really allows you to use a lot of the controls with the system itself. So again, you don't have to have all these add-ons. It's a very robust system. And then we are also supplying the full kit, the full system for your home. So reach out and we can supply you with a kit that has the interior, exterior ducts, the manifolds, the register boxes, the diffusers, and controllers.
And for me, Zach, to add a topic that is important for Brink to tell is that we talked about the efficiency of the unit and that you can win back energy, and that's all correct. But the heat recovery ventilation unit offer a lot of more features that are maybe as important for the homeowners as the efficiency. I also mentioned one point is that we filter the air. So also people who have lung diseases like asthma, they have a great benefit of installing a heat recovery ventilation system in their home, because we filter the outside air and that provides you with clean air inside. There are different type of filters, but you can have, let's say, the basic filter for normal dust, but you can also have so-called pollen filters that can filter out small particles. There are filters that can take away smell. So another great feature of the heat recovery ventilation units is that all the air that you breathe is filtered. One of the other great benefits is that if you have a heat recovery system in your home, the supplied air has almost the same temperature as the room temperature, which means that you don't feel draft or anything of the heat recovery ventilation system. And that's a great benefit compared, for example, if you open the window to get fresh air in wintertime, or if you have a solution with window grills. And then one of the other great things of ventilation in general, but also of heat recovery ventilation is that we clean the air in your house all the time. So we take humidity out, we take unpleasant odors out, we take unpleasant gases out, which gives you a healthy indoor climate. If you don't do that in a well-insulated house, you will for sure get mold problems. And with the ventilation, we make sure that you don't get these mold problems. And finally, one of the reasons why people, for example, in the Netherlands install also heat recovery ventilation is that if you live close to, for example, a motorway or a train station or maybe an airport, if you like or if you need to ventilate your house and you don't have heat recovery ventilation, you do that with, for example, opening a window, but then you get the noise from outside. And one of the benefits of the heat recovery ventilation system is that you can keep the facade of your house closed. You don't need to open the windows and still have pleasant, healthy, and fresh air inside. Of course, you can open a window if you have a heat recovery system. That's no problem. But you can also close it and still have good indoor air. And these 5 key points help to give people healthy and pleasant and comfortable air all day long.
Well, and for all those reasons, I mean, HRVs and ERVs are absolutely central to passive house design and construction. So I think that's why people will be so excited that there's a major new player in this space for the North American market. So congratulations, Arthur and Gabby, for your work in advance getting the UL listings, and if people who are listening now can rest assured that those have been secured. And so good luck with getting the new unit into projects and to project teams' hands. I think it's going to be fun to watch.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Zach. Yeah, very excited. Send your projects along. Excited to work with you and provide great indoor air quality and comfort so you and your family can thrive.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Arthur and Gabby, for joining us here on the Passive House podcast. It's been a delight to have you.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, Zach. Bye.
Bye.
And that was Gabrielle O'Grady from 475 and Arthur Dijkstra coming to us from Brink in the Netherlands. Really good to hear that history. I quite the long history of Brink, but I quite enjoyed that. Coming from the origins of blacksmithing, then coming to America, looking at forced air heating and the Three Brothers, and then the energy crisis is responsible for so much change in the 70s. In a similar way to what we've seen people's lives change in sort of the 2008s more recently, but that's the 70s was a critical. In fact, it was a critical time for passive house. You can trace the origins of passive house back to that time of suddenly having to think about this stuff called oil not being perhaps as reliable and abundant as it was up until that point. And then that led people to think about energy efficiency. And so instead of just pumping huge amounts of hot air, we were thinking, well, should we maybe try and reclaim some of that heat while also providing fresh air? And that's where we ended up with the heat recovery ventilation. And interesting thinking about the adoption of something that did already exist, but more in the commercial space, and bringing it into a residential scale, and that's sort of where it seems that the innovation from Brink was to take that process and then evolve it for homes and for the residential space, and then that leading to increased efficiency with what we're mostly familiar now with the cross counterflow, which sounds very technical, but basically, as you pointed out, that's air flowing in opposite directions in close proximity to each other across the medium, and that's where the magic of the heat recovery occurs. So really good stuff.
Yeah, no kidding. And I mean, HRV, ERV, it's so central to passive house practice. And I think all of us have seen that diagram of the cross counterflow as we learn about kind of the magic and how these units can be so efficient. So it's cool to learn about the role that Brink has been playing over the decades in developing this technology to this place where now it's become so central to passive house. So there's a little bit of a full circle going on here now that it's becoming available to passive house practitioners in North America. And in the 70s, that initial kind of work on passive house was happening in Canada, right? So there's all these kind of cross-pollination moments, I think, that have been happening across the Atlantic and across the world, but in this story across the Atlantic to get us where we are today. So that was really interesting. And the brothers piece is like with each one kind of doing their portion of the business, I think that has to turn into like some sort of fable movie or something. I don't know. If you're for the in kind of industrial geeks out there.
We didn't touch on it during that interview, but there are plenty of resources out there that describe the difference between an ERV and an HRV. So just to briefly mention the H is for heat and the E is for energy. So the HRV are generally considered a better choice if you have an overly humid house during winter, with the ERV being a little bit better if the house is too dry, because you're actually exchanging some of that moisture with the energy, not just the heat. So it's all to do with a different medium in the exchanger. I don't know if do we have any resources about that on the accelerator?
It compares ERV and HRV. I don't think we have them on the accelerator, but we can find a link for folks with some explainer material, definitely.
Yeah. But I think it's also great, back to the point about having Gabby on the call. Not only do 475 help with sizing, but she's done a lot of work in this area now, and I think that's the value of having a partner like 475 is that it's not just buying a box, but you getting someone who really knows what they're talking about, helping you with the sizing, but also the layout and figuring out what sort of overall system you need, which is really, really helpful for designers, architects, even homeowners who are trying to figure all this stuff out. So it's really great to have someone like 475 supporting a brand like Brink to get these into homes.
And that's a great segue to thank 475 for being a founding sponsor of Passive House Accelerator, and that's the link there that has connected us to Brink as they roll the product out here in North America. So thank you.
Nice. Yeah. And I just want to point out one of Gabby's very early comments right at the start of the interview about good ventilation and ERV being effectively preventative healthcare. And we've talked a lot about this in recent times with all the air filtration and the problems that you've had with outdoor air not being great. And I talked a little bit about the filters. We've experienced it here with people. It's most often an indoor air quality is one of the bigger advantages of passive house in more temperate climates like we have here in New Zealand and Australia, because the energy savings isn't, I mean, it's still important, but it's not as harsh an environment. It's not absolutely critical that we protect ourselves against these really, really harsh outdoor environments. But what we do very badly is provide enough fresh air and also extract the stale and damp air from home. So ventilation, I think, is at a point now in this part of the world where it's arguably more important than insulation. We've kind of got enough insulation in our code in a lot of places to do really good energy efficiency, but we're just so poor at doing ventilation. So I think it's a real critical part. And in fact, when I'm talking to people about passive house early on, I say this is one of the key benefits of passive house. And when you're doing a design for a home, you really need to design it around the ventilation first, and then sort of it's literally the lungs of the house, and you want to get those core elements of how the house operates first. Anyway, I could rant on about ventilation, the importance of that.
No, I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yeah. So great to have these guys there, and so really exciting bringing it into today. Gabby mentioned at the end there some of the add-ons. I think it's a really good point that a lot of these systems, you get the box, but then you have to sort of add other bits to it. And we're talking about smart homes a lot more now, and there are different ways that you can get third-party controllers and connect to temperature sensors over Wi-Fi. So it's really good to know that Brink have a lot of that all included, so that you're not having to couple things together and then find that there are other things that you need to add on. And I really like the features of the matching of the indoor air temperature. So tempering the air is also a really important part, not just for the efficiency, but for keeping heat pumps and the flow of air comfortable. Because if it doesn't, I mean, the best ventilation systems are effectively invisible, but they're also not felt. If you can feel air moving, that's where you start to get complaints from people living in the home. So it's really important to avoid drafts or avoid almost any sensation of air being moved, because that doesn't feel very pleasant normally. So it's not necessarily easy to do, because when it's done well, you don't notice that it's happening. And they've obviously gone to some really good research and development to ensure that happens. Very good. All right, and so I think we've got links to 475 on the website, because as you mentioned, they are one of the great supporters. So people can find out more information there, and particularly across the States, if you are looking for the latest and greatest from Brink, then definitely go and check out and contact the team at 475. All right. Thanks for that, Zach. I enjoyed that.
Thanks, Matthew. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We'll see you back again with a regular episode in the feed. And until then, have a great week. And we'll be back on the Passive House podcast.